Well, good morning, friends and family of Joy to the Nations, and a special welcome to all of those of you who are listening with us this morning. And I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to join with us. And I'd love just to take a moment to pray for us together. Father, you know exactly the situation that we're in today. You know the thoughts that are on our hearts, and some of them that we haven't even been able to voice or express. You know our worries, you know our fears, you know our hopes. And I thank you, Lord, that you're able to speak accurately into every one of our lives. And my prayer and my request to you, Father, for every single one watching and listening this morning is that you would reveal yourself as a magnificent God, as a great God, as a caring God, as a strong God, as a comforting God to every single one of us this morning. Amen. Well, friends, it's a great time to look at the character of God. And the way that we look at a character is we see how the person acts. You know, it's easy to say, well, that person's generous, but you actually have to look at whether their actions match up their description. And one of the descriptions that the Bible makes about God is that he is a refuge. And I want to look at a man called David and his story. And he reflects upon God. And he says, one of the things that I've noticed about God is that he's a refuge. And so I'd love just to look at Psalm 18, verses 1 and 2, and then I'll read 17 to 19. David says this: I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge. Verse 17, he rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. And so David says, I want everyone to know about the character of God, that God does something for me. He's not just a God in the sky. He's not just a spiritual being. He's actively involved in my life. And this is how he's actively involved, is that there came a circumstance that was too big for me. It was overwhelming. I was about to be overcome by it. But God did something. He rescued me. He put me into a safe place. And the words that I would use to describe God are rock, rescuer, strength, comforter, fortress, deliverer, and refuge. And a refuge is a safe place, a place that you can run into. As a kid, there was a game that we played called 1, 2, 3 Block, and you would be the person, one person would be on and they would try and catch you. But if you made it to the safe place called a den, you would be safe. And so you would run as hard as you could to the safe place as something of a refuge. And in the Old Testament, there were cities of refuge. And if you were working or something happened whereby you caused the death of another, the normal law would be that you would be put to death. The law was a life for a life. But if it was an accident, you could run into a city of refuge, and there were 6 of them in Israel at that time. And in that city of refuge, it would be a safe place for you, a shelter, and a place where you could get a fair trial, where they would examine the evidence. And if you were innocent, you would go free. And that's a city of refuge, a shelter or a safe place. And I think David is saying, God, in my life, there came a situation where I was innocent, but I would have been in trouble if I could not have run into you. God, you're like a city of refuge. Well, Brendan, what was that circumstance? And the circumstance, perhaps just to give you a summary, was this, is that this young man called David was a servant in the king's palace. The king's name was Saul, and Saul hated David. And for this reason is that the Israelites sang a song. And the song went like this, and I promise you I'm not going to sing it, just to spare you pain, but the song was like this: Saul killed the thousands, but David the tens of thousands. In other words, everybody knew David was a more mighty warrior than Saul. And Saul got jealous, and then he got mad, and then he took action to kill David. And he tried a few times, and then David recognized this is a situation that is not going to end well, and he had to take action. And so David finds himself in a situation that is quite similar to where you and I find ourselves today. Firstly, he was innocent. Secondly, he was under great pressure and in danger. And thirdly, he had to make a decision. He had to move. He had to do some action. And that's probably where you and I find ourselves today. The coronavirus and all the pressures that it's impacted upon our lives and upon our work, upon our marriages and upon our children, upon our families, it's not our fault. It's got nothing to do with us. We really are innocent participants in this. But the fact of the matter is, even though we're innocent, this situation has caused us great pressure and even danger. And then thirdly, we must act. And the truth is, under pressure, we all run to something or to someone. We all do it. And what's helpful is just to see how David runs. And David says, under pressure, I run to God. I run to God because he's a safe place. He's a shelter. He's a comfort. He's a strength. And so David has a choice where to run, and he could run into his own abilities and his own strength. He's a mighty warrior. He could have sorted out this situation. I'm sure he either could have raised an army, could have gained support, or has single-handedly taken Saul on. And that was a possibility. Or the other choice is to run from King Saul and to run away from danger. And he chooses the latter. And the reason why he does that is because to actually kill Saul would be murder. And even though he might have a reason, it might be self-defense, he chooses not to take that path. And he chooses to go on the run. And that's not cowardly. Really what he's doing in running away from Saul, he's saying, actually, God, I'm going to choose to allow you to look after me. I'm going to choose you to get justice. I'm going to choose you to take responsibility for my life and my future and my family. I'm actually going to trust you for everything, Lord. And in doing so, he's choosing to run into God as his refuge. And I want to say that what David did was exceptionally difficult. And here's why. It's because the process of David being on the run and being chased by Saul and chased by Saul's army was not just a short moment. It was probably a period of 10 years of David avoiding King Saul and his armies. It was a long-term process of him trusting in God. And the great difficulty of the Christian faith, of the way of following Jesus, is that there are no quick fixes. We love to trust that God would sort out everything quickly and that we would go back to our safe way of living. But the Bible doesn't record that, and certainly David's life doesn't record that at all. It's 10 years of actually trusting God, 10 years until King Saul is killed in a battle and David is put in his place as king. And here's the difficulty about following Jesus, is there's often a gap or a delay between what we trust in God for and when he acts. But David's life teaches us is that in that gap, in that delay, in that waiting period, God is an incredible refuge. He's an incredible strength. He's an incredible comforter. He's an incredible provider. And I think all of us find ourselves in the delay. And whilst certainly we can get on with our lives, we can work, we can do certain things, certainly it's going to be a while until that which we had in mind, our future, some of the things that we were really wanting to get on with, can happen. My daughter is studying at Pretoria. She's wanting to study medicine. And there's a process for her to get there, but now there's been put a pause, and I don't know how long that delay is going to be. I'm sure all of us had certain plans that we were wanting to accomplish, but there's a pause, and that pause is a difficult pause, and the truth is we're not sure how long the pause is going to be, and what do we do, and who do we run to in this time? And David is encouraging us to run into God. And the great difficulty of that is that it actually means that we have to let go of trusting in ourselves, and we have to start to trust in God for our finances, for our provision, for our future, for our safety, and for our family. And that's not natural for us. Almost all of us have grown up in cultures and ways and a set of beliefs that would be opposing of actually really trusting in God. And it's easy to say, God, I love you. It's easy to say, God, I worship you. It's even easy to say, God, I believe you. I believe in you. But the real crunch of the Christian faith is when we actually have to trust him with everything. And that's possibly the zones that we're entering into now. We grow up learning to depend upon almost everything else but God. And I have the privilege of being part of a church that has many different types of cultures. And broadly, you can split them into two: the individualistic culture and the collectivist culture. The individualistic culture that I grew up in and that my father modeled for me is that you depend upon yourself. You work hard with the ability and the resources that you have, and you make a way. And when things get difficult, you toughen up and you make a plan and you hold out. And really it's a culture of self-reliance. And my dad was a proud man, and he would very seldom, almost never, depend upon anyone else. And when he did have to depend upon someone else, he hated it. And so that is a culture that I brought into the Christian faith, which is, yes, God, I love you, but when things get difficult, I dig deep within my own strength. And the collectivist culture is completely different, but still ends up in the same end game. Many members of our church who belong to the collectivist culture says this, is that we would never dream under pressure of just trying to make a plan for ourselves or even just our immediate family, is that we are truly human when we belong to one another and we take care for one another. And the collectivist culture says under pressure, together we make a plan, and my family and those around me and my extended family will come through this together. And both cultures really have the same end game, which is a dependency either on yourself or on many people, but neither of them really end up on trusting in God. And David is teaching us that it's possible to trust in God, because it doesn't matter whether you're from an individualistic culture or a collectivist culture, certainly your ways and your ability to look after yourself aren't as good as the magnificence of God being your refuge and your shelter and your comfort and your security. And so David in Psalm 18, really what he's doing, he's looking back many years later, over a decade later, and the situation has changed. He was in great danger. He was pressurized. He had no future. And God sorts him out. God delivers him. God rescues him. God provides for him and makes him king. And he looks back and says, oh God, I really love you. Why do I love you, God? Because you've acted in a certain way. You've shown your character to me when I had nothing, when I was completely exposed and completely vulnerable, when I could not make a way for myself. You acted on my behalf. You comforted me. You strengthened me. You were my rock. You were my fortress. You were my deliverer. And why did you do that, Lord? It's because you delighted in me. You delighted in me. And this is David's message to you, regardless of actually whether you would say, I believe in God, or I don't believe in God. And I would just want to say, if you would say to me, Brennan, I don't believe in God, I want to say, that's okay. But the message to you this morning is that God delights in you. And he delights to be your refuge and your strength and your comfort today. Brendan, how can you say that? How can you say that he delights in me? Because I have to be honest, Brendan, I do not feel his delight. I don't feel his love. In fact, I have got no connection to God. I don't sense him. He is completely absent from my life. And if I'm really honest, I don't even have a desire for God. How can you say, Brendan, that God delights in me and he wants to be the same to me as the story that you're talking about, David? This is how I can answer your question, because I think that's a really valid question. And that is that the Father sends his Son to not just be a city of refuge, but a person of refuge. And the life that Jesus models and demonstrates is that all who come to him will find safety and security and comfort. And he says these words. He says, come to me, all who are heavily burdened, and I will give you rest. And that word rest is not just, well, I'll make your life easy. That word rest is peace in the very essence of who you are. That word rest means shelter. It means comfort. It means wholeness. It means provision. It means the very deepest longings of your heart fulfilled in him. And Jesus says, come to me, all who are heavily burdened, and I will give you rest. For my burden is light and my yoke is easy. And Jesus is saying, if you come to me, the circumstances that you face might not change, but the way that you walk through the circumstances will change. And so the invitation of Jesus is to him. And he doesn't say, come to me, all of you who've got your lives together. Come to me, all of you who have never messed up. Come to me, who have got on top of your life. Actually, he says, come to me, all of you who've made a mess of your life. Come to me, those of you who are worried and anxious. Come to me, those of you who are deeply concerned about finances and about your staff and about your business and about your children and about your marriage. Come to me, those of you who feel overwhelmed. Come to me, because walking with me will bring you rest. It will bring you peace. And so the Father moves beyond just a city of refuge, and he gives you the person of refuge, Jesus. And the invitation is there to you today. Brendan, how do I walk into this person? How do I walk into the city of refuge? How do I walk into the person of Jesus? I've got no clue. My encouragement to you is to take a step. And that step is just what we call a step of faith, or a step of courage, or a step of risk. And it's very simple. It's to maybe take a moment just to think of that which is causing you the most anxiety this morning. Maybe the thing that when you wake up, you're thinking about. When you go to sleep, you're thinking about. You're thinking about, how can I provide for my staff? How can I provide for my family? How can I sort out my health issues? How can I sort out my marriage? There's so much pressure that you're under. Just bring that issue to God. And it's a very simple prayer. God, I bring to you this issue and I ask for help. And just like you showed David your character, that you're a refuge, I pray that you'd show it to me. And really what you're doing is that you're moving from your city into God's city. You're letting go of control, of you taking responsibility for your life, and you're allowing God to take responsibility. I'm not saying you don't do anything and you just, completely just sit and wait. No, you've got abilities and resources. But I'm saying at the very essence of who you are, you're no longer striving to sort out this issue, because the reality is, it's overcome us. We're just like David. We need to be rescued. And God is a magnificent rescuer. And He's proven that by the giving of His Son, Jesus. And I would so encourage you to take up this invitation. What's it going to cost you to let go of your pride? What's it going to cost you to stop making a plan by yourself? What will it cost you just to cry out and say, God, if you're real, if you're really there, show me how to take refuge in you. And I close with this, is that we all run into a city. You're either running today into the city that you're building, or you're running into the city of God. And the encouragement of David is to run into the city of God. But there's better news. And the most amazing news, and even as I say it, it might sound foolish to you because it's so good, is that in Revelation chapter 21, it says that there's a new city. And in that city, God will dwell with you. Although we experience God in spirit, we experience Him as a refuge. We often experience Him as absent. But there will come a time when He wraps all things up and He will be with us. No more tears, no more pain, no more pandemics, no more diseases, no more death, but the peace and the joy and the security and the safety and the provision that was always meant to be ours will one day be ours. And that's the good news that Jesus comes to bring. And there's an invitation to you today to step into it. And I would love just to pray for you right now. Let's pray. I'm going to keep my eyes open. Father, thank you for every single person listening. And my prayer is that all of us would have courage to bring those areas, our marriages, our children, our businesses, our finances, our work, that we would have the courage to bring them to you. And I pray that you would be a magnificent refuge, fortress, rock over our lives. And I pray these things in your precious Son's name. In the name of Jesus, amen.